Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
Hello, this is Dr. Russell Strickland, and I'm your host of An Unconventional Life podcast. Today, I have with me Dr. D. Anthony Miles, and Dr. Miles is an entrepreneur, award-winning researcher, award-winning professor, statistician, legal expert witness, business expert, and best-selling author. He's been featured in places like Fox News, ABC, CBS, Forbes, The Huffington Post, and more. I can't wait to jump into our conversation here with Dr. Miles. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Strickland. This is such a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Want to let everybody know that today's episode is brought to you by Dissertation Done. And we here at Dissertation Done like to help students or people in general in a couple of different ways. First of all, if you're an adult doctoral student who is approaching the dissertation and knows that you need that extra edge to move forward through this process proactively, maybe you are struggling through this process right now. Hell, maybe you're about ready to quit and give up on the whole thing. If any of those is you, reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done. That's dissertationdone.com/done. And we'll set up a conversation, see if you might be a good fit for our Fast Track Your Dissertation coaching program, where we get you from here to graduation in less time than you would have thought possible. Now, if you are out there already graduated or running an expert business of any kind, and you would like to up-level that and expand your authority, well, our Expand Your Authority program does just that. We take folks from a blank page to being a published author in just a very few months, and no better way to get your name out there and to build your credibility than having a first-name doctor and be a published author who literally wrote the book on your area of expertise. So with that in mind, I wanted to go over to Dr. Miles and welcome you once again. Tell me, Dr. Miles, when you decided to go back, after you'd already been involved in your career for a while, you decided to go back and get your doctoral degree. What motivated that decision?
Oh, that's a great question, Dr. Strickland. Originally, I wanted to go to law school, and I want to study venture capital, and I want to study corporate law.
Okay.
And what made me decide not to do that, I said, okay, law school is okay, but when somebody calls you doctor, it's just a different appeal. So I said, okay, I could go to law school if I wanted to, but I said I should go for the doctorate. And the reason that I originally wanted to go for my doctorate was build a credibility in my field, because I want to start my own consulting practice. I saw a niche in the marketplace, and I said, I think I can build my expertise around that area. And that's when I chose to pursue my doctorate. I was originally going to go to law school, and I just made a shift. And that's what happened with me. Mm-hmm.
Now, when you said that you saw an area that you could leverage or exploit for your career, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes. Entrepreneurship is a relatively new field. Some people say it's not. Entrepreneurship was my field of study, and it's a derivative of economics. And it's not that many people that have a Ph.D. in entrepreneurship. So I saw a niche right there that I could build myself around.
And
so I said, okay. Exactly. And then I was always an entrepreneur. I played in a rock and roll band while I was an undergrad. We were supposed to get a record deal. My hair was longer, and I grew up in the MTV era. And, it got to be my mom and parents said, it's time to get a job and come back to the real world.
When people could understand why the M in MTV stood for music, like now,
yes.
Like MTV, why is it music television? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's not even that anymore. I'm talking 1981. MTV is our YouTube now.
Yeah, that's right.
But,
So you decided to go into the doctoral degree program.
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you? Did you encounter any bumps along the way? I know we were talking a little bit about war stories before we started the episode today.
Oh, absolutely. They put me through an interview process, and they did a pre-interview, and the lady that interviewed me was the director of the doctor program, and I didn't know if she was just trying to test me. She made a comment about, well, if you pursue this degree, don't expect to get a job with it, or something like that. And I thought that somebody to tell a prospective student not to pursue a field of study. And then I had to take a test, I guess, to see if I knew how to write. And my interview, I think, went well because I showed them a portfolio of my work. I had done research on Walmart. I had done international research on Walmart penetrating markets.
Okay.
I had done research on Kmart. I had done research on stamps.com. And I brought all of that to my interview, and that I wanted to show them what my portfolio of work.
Right.
And I think they were impressed because nobody ever done that before. I just took it a step further. And then when I got into the program, they made me take a writing test, I guess, to see if I knew how to put words together. I guess I did okay. And then I started my program, and it was the first professor that I had. He ended up being my mentor, Dr. Reginald Traylor. Yes, and he passed away before I graduated, and I still am touched by him. He was a great man. He was a mathematician from Houston, and he really touched my soul. And sometimes when you're in a doctoral program, you just meet people that touch your soul.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, a great mentor.
He would have been my chair had he lived. He would have been my chair.
Yeah, a great mentor is just it's a game changer. I've shared with the audience before. I went to graduate school originally as a traditional graduate student, so straight out of college, I was going to be a research professor in astronomy and astrophysics. And my advisor there, he was the guy who like literally wrote the book on what I was studying at the time. We were studying cosmology, which is kind of the way the universe from the Big Bang on, all that kind of stuff. And working with him, it was such a tremendous experience to be with somebody who was, really a celebrity, a rock star in that field. And he also passed very unexpectedly while I was there, not long before I was set to graduate. He died in a plane crash, and that was a huge loss to the community, to the university, and then obviously to me personally and professionally as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, those are. It's great to have that time with them. You got to appreciate the time that you have because you never know how long it's going to be.
Oh, I remember the last time I saw Dr. Traylor. We were at a conference together in Salt Lake City, Utah. Yeah. And he never told me this, but he spoke highly of me to other people. I never knew he thought highly of me. He was a really fair, even guy. And you know what? That touched my soul. And when I did my dissertation, I actually almost dedicated a page to him.
That's nice.
He was a great guy, and he was no nonsense. The type I like. He tells you if it's raining. He tells you if the sun is out. And I totally identify what you just said about your mentor. I get it. Wow.
Yeah, I had another person that helped me in the dissertation phase. Before I know what I know now as a dissertation coach, I got stuck on how I was going to collect my data, and my committee let me get to the point where I got stuck on how I was going to collect my data, which shouldn't be the case. But a person I was working with at the time, Dr. Gary Sutter, who's since passed as well. He was a dean at a school that I was adjunct teaching for, and I just told him about this. We got along really well, so I was just kind of bitching at him about what was going on in the dissertation process. And he said, "Well, you know what? I can get you in touch with our students, and I can facilitate you being able to reach out to our students and have them participate in your study." And that was the thing.
Wow, that's awesome.
Eventually
awesome.
I would have done something, but I don't know when, and I don't know how delayed I would have been, and how frustrated and everything else I would have been about it. But this little thing for him was such a big deal for me.
That's what I call a mentor.
Yeah.
Pulls you up under their wing and says, "No, son, you don't do it like this. You do it like that."
Here's the way to do
That's
it.
what I call a mentor. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a wonderful story. Wow.
So then, as you were mentioning before, it doesn't always work out that way, right? You got some war stories to tell too. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I could definitely. Let me say this, Dr. Strickland. I think you'll agree with me on this. The dissertation, getting a Ph.D., it's not for everybody. Let's put that out there, okay? The dissertation is like this, or having a doctorate is like this. Many call, but few are chosen, okay? Yeah. Some people just don't have a knack to get a Ph.D. And I don't mean that to say if it's relative to intelligence. It's really not about intelligence. It's about perseverance. Can you follow instructions? Can you do the job assigned to you? Okay. And if you can't do that, you're going to have a long day at the office. And some people just can't do that. And I would say I had a lot of people that started with me but didn't end up with me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. So it's hard to pin these numbers down. Excuse me. It's hard to pin these numbers down, but what you hear is about 50% of folks who start a doctoral program finish. A lot of folks I talk to,
less than that.
Yeah, their cohorts, they say it's worse than that. So,
yeah.
So I call that the dissertation coin flip, because it's kind of 50-50 is whether you're going to get through it or not. And that's scary when you think about, these are people who earned a master's degree, who are very qualified, and who had the gumption to apply to a doctoral program. Most people aren't even going to bother to do that. So
exactly.
when you think that you think you're good enough and still only about half the people finish, that's a scary proposition, and it might be less than half. So
yes, the dissertation brings truth about you as a scholar. And a lot of people get exposed about their truth. I've seen people go into a doctoral program for one semester and get kicked out. The university I graduated from, and again, everybody's not meant to be Dr. Strickland or Dr. Miles. And it's a dissertation. I said this at a keynote speaking event that I was talking to some students at a conference. I said the dissertation is the difference between a student and a scholar. You have to make the transition from being a student to a scholar. And some people cannot do that. Can you work independently? You have to have somebody tell you what to do. And some people, they just can't make that transition. And then you have the other group of people who are just happy to be in a doctor program and tell people they're working on their doctorate and they don't graduate. Yeah, they just, I'm working on my doctorate. And then that goes on for 10, 15 years.
And you can be, quote, working on it for a long time, like you said.
but I want street cred because I'm working on it.
Right. But I think you hit on the point that's really important earlier. And it's, in my experience, the students that I've worked with, the people that I've met, it is about perseverance. It's about showing up, doing the things you need to do, getting it wrong, and submitting it so that you can get beat up and you dust yourself off, pick yourself up, and go get it wrong again. But each time you get it wrong, it's going to be closer to you getting it right. And getting it right is not a black and white thing. It's when your committee approves it, when they're happy with it, that's when you got it, quote, right. But you're going to get it wrong a lot of times before you get it right. And again, I'm using that word kind of facetiously, but that's the important part, is to be able to keep getting back up again and again.
I totally agree. And I'll take that a step further, Dr. Strickland. When you're type A personality, you're the oldest in your family like I am. I'm the guy that's successful. Yeah. And when you tell me to do something 3 or 4 times, that messes me up in the head, okay? I'm used to getting it right the first time.
Right.
So you got to, like my uncle used to tell me, because my uncle was my mentor. My uncle was a statistician that worked for the government. And he helped me with my dissertation as well. And he used to always tell me, lose that ego. Your ego is not your amigo, okay?
I like it. That's very cool.
Absolutely. Yes, you can't learn and know everything at the same time.
Right.
And we get people that have a master's degree and they think they're prima donnas, like I was, and I had to tone it down a bit. And he says, you don't know everything. You're never going to do this again. And so when you're getting guidance, soak up some of that guidance from your mentor, which is your chair. Now, here's the other caveat too. You might have a chair, but they might not be a mentor.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Okay?
That's true. I think what you were saying just a minute ago, though, is important. The further you go in education, the less you think you know. And that doesn't mean the less you know more. But as a high school student, you're just sure that you know everything. And as a college graduate, you're still pretty sure you know everything. When you get your master's degree, you're starting to figure out, I don't know everything. And when you get your doctorate degree, you're basically at the point where you realize, hey, I basically know nothing. Like in the ocean of stuff out there is to know, I know a little bit. It's a lot more than a lot of other people, but there's just so much.
Oh, absolutely. It follows that Zen proverb. You have to empty your cup. Anytime you're trying to pursue anything, you have to empty your cup. Allow somebody to pour something into your cup.
Right.
And all of us, even myself, even with me having a doctorate now, I still try to empty my cup.
Absolutely.
Always be willing to learn. Sometimes just because you know something in a particular field doesn't mean you know something in this field.
Right.
And and always read. I read about 3 books every month. I'm a voracious reader. And also practice, learn about your craft and your field. Don't always be, well, I got my doctorate, that's the end game. No, that's the beginning.
Right.
That's the beginning.
The end of the program is called commencement, not termination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have people that think they have their doctorate and they figure out why nobody's checking for them because you haven't done any research. Having a doctorate and not do research is like being a heavyweight champion and you have to defend your title. Okay.
Well, I would differ with you on that. I think that there are certainly academia and folks that take that route, and that's fine. But there's also the practitioner side of things where you have your doctoral degree, where you've learned to be a critical thinker and a lifelong learner, but you're not out there publishing research in academic journals. You probably are doing research, but it's just not something that's going in those academic journals. It might be something for, you're leading your district, your school district, and there's all sorts of research projects that you're either overseeing or undertaking, but they're not things that they're getting published. So I think there's a practitioner side to that model as well.
Yeah, let me clarify what I meant by that, Dr. Strickland. What I meant by that is how active are you?
Right.
Now, there's the holy trinity. When you have your PhD, you have to do 3 things. There's research, consulting, and publications.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't publish, present at conferences. If you don't present at conferences, speak at events. Always be active. That's the point that I was trying to make. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be in a journal. How active are you? Do you do media interviews? Have you written any books? Some people don't want to publish in academic journals because that's a specific audience that reads, a high level of research. Say you want to publish a book about a problem that you see that needs to be highlighted.
Right.
So when I say publications, I mean the umbrella under that means books, conferences, learning.
And I think we're in agreement, because that's what we're doing with now. When our students graduate, we're encouraging them and other people to come to us so that we can get the book written. And, do you want to start a podcast? Do you want to have a YouTube channel? What sort of things do you want to do to produce and put things out into the world so that you can start to cultivate a following and an audience and people who will come to you when they have issues that you can help them with. If you want to follow that expert model.
Absolutely. When you work the Holy Trinity, that's my uncle told me this before I graduated. That's why I'm sharing it with you. I think your audience will get a lot out of this. Always be active in what you do.
Yeah.
You may not want to present at a conference, all right? Then speak it somewhere. Somebody may let you be keynote speaker. Find something that you're passionate about. If you want to be a legal expert witness, they want to call you to a case to be an expert witness. On what? Your body of work defines you. So you want to build your body of work post-graduation. And it doesn't necessarily just mean journal articles. I love what you're doing, because I always say this: a book trumps 1,000 journal articles. Okay?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, when you can say, my name is Dr. So-and-so, and I literally wrote the book on whatever it is you do. I mean,
that's exactly.
That puts you in rare air.
Because it also, here's the downside when you publish journal articles. They have a sea of articles in their journal.
You're
so
right.
that means if you do a search on it on, say, Google, they won't find it. The only way they find it if you put it on your LinkedIn page or Facebook, just said you did an article. But when you write a book, it's searchable by all the search engines, and people say, this guy wrote a book? How come I've never heard of him?
Right.
So that's wonderful what you're doing. I wish I had met you when I was graduating. Nobody sat down and told me any of this. I had to learn it, through trial and error.
And it's all about what you want to do. That's the other thing I think that's so important with the doctoral degree. You mentioned your philosophy and the Holy Trinity that you have there. Other folks do things a little differently. The point is that it's okay because you have those options now. When you have a doctoral degree, there's a seat at almost any table for you. And that's something that's very hard to get in any other way.
A lot of times we graduate when we're doctoral students, we have zero. We have, the dissertation is zero. So you have to build something. And I always tell students that are graduating, try to do a conference once a year. I know you probably don't want to spend the money, but find a conference in your hometown where you live, see if the conference fee is, just present on something.
Right.
And then by the time you graduate, you have some, modicum of a body of work.
Right.
Your goal is to build your credibility to have a body of work. And I love what you're doing.
And the dissertation, like you said, as much work as people do on that, and as much as some people are very passionate about their dissertation projects, I teach our students not to do that, to get something done. But whatever it is with the dissertation, once it's done, it's done. I've asked students, all the time, how many people do you think are going to read your dissertation when you're done? And one guy told me at one point, well, I know one person. And I said, is that your mom? He said, yeah. I said, your mom's not going to read your dissertation. She'll say she read it, and you'll be nice and respectful and not challenge her on it. And you guys won't talk about it anymore after that. But nobody reads your dissertation because it's a school project, right? Very rarely somebody will put a lot of effort into it and make their dissertation something that can live beyond that. But as far as I'm concerned, that's a bit of a waste of energy. Make your dissertation do what it's supposed to do, turn your first name into doctor, and then put the extra energy into writing a book or, developing podcasts or whatever it might be. Get out there so that people can actually find you, because they're not going to find that dissertation. It's
absolutely. The dissertation is actually the start. And let me tell you what I did, and maybe some people get some knowledge out of this. We started a group of people, and we had a local library in our neighborhood. What we did is listen, would you be interested in if we donated our dissertations from different universities, from the people that we have in our group, to start a special section in a library? And they loved it.
Yeah.
So we got about 10 of us together, and I said, could you give me your dissertation, hardcover, with the binding. Mm-hmm. And we started a group, and we have a special collection area in a library for dissertations for people that want to read a dissertation. And this is cataloged in a library system in a Congress. And that's just, that was something that it was an idea that I had. I didn't expect to do anybody else. I said, hey, I'm doing this. You want to do it with me? And I was surprised a lot of people responded. So you get some knowledge out of your dissertation doing it that way as well. And then remember, that document stays there whether you die or you're living. That's a living document.
Right, it's there.
You build your legacy. And that dissertation is going to stay at that library, and it can't be checked out. You can only look at it within the library system or whatever. But yes, that's what we did, and I definitely think that's an idea. Oh yeah,
I like that. Now, tell me about what it was like to finish this process up and graduate. What was that experience like for you, defending your dissertation? I'm assuming they said congratulations, Dr. Miles, at the end, like they usually do. How did that process go for you?
Didn't go too smoothly. Tell you some war stories here. I had a chair, and I actually had a problem in my school. I had a succession of 3 chairs. The first chair that I had was incompetent. She had no business being a dissertation chair. She was traveling outside of the country, and we would meet. We'd be lucky if we met once a month or once every 2 months.
Yeah. And
we would meet, and she forgot what we had discussed the last time. I did this for a year, and I said, you know what, this isn't working. Yeah. And I believe that she knew that I was getting frustrated, so she removed herself. Instead of me getting rid of her, she removed herself. The next chair that I got.
Was that mutual, or did she just decide to do it herself? Did she talk to you about it?
She decided about it. It came as a surprise because I was going to fire her. Mm-hmm. And they make it hard for the student to do that. And I believe she saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. You weren't doing anything. I don't have to tell you weren't doing anything. We both know you weren't. I should have been graduated a year before I actually graduated.
Yeah.
But because of her, you remember, when you're a student, you're expending resources.
Right.
You have to pay the dissertation hours. And if somebody keeps you in purgatory for a year and a half, 2 years, that could be a problem. Now that same chair.
And the big part is, though, that the tuition, and some of our students, when they're going to school, the tuition is high, very high, and they're paying that. Some of them they're paying a reduced rate because they're in dissertation hours. Some of them are paying full freight the whole time. Regardless as to that, the real money that you're spending comes in two forms. It's opportunity cost. So you're not out there earning doctor money when you're in school being a doctoral student. And that career that you're going to be embarking on once you graduate is being pushed off. And that could be easily $30, $40, $50,000 a year right in the first few years that you're talking about. And then the other thing is
Get
just
a bad
frustration,
chair. Yeah, the frustration of
sitting there with this thing on your
absolutely.
shoulders for an extra year.
And what's critical is, and they don't teach you this obviously when you're in a doctor program. In my doctor program, had a small pool of people that can only chair dissertations.
Okay.
So you didn't have a whole lot of people to choose from. And if you get a bad chair, which this woman was, that could be a long day at the office.
Yeah.
And I had to be proactive with mine because I said, why are we still here? I'm giving you, ask me,
Yeah.
why are you? I will let her sit on my chapters and not send them to me. That'd be a phone call. And she goes, well, I'm still looking at it. I says, well, it's been about a month.
That's a long time.
Well, yeah, you don't rush me. I says, well, that with all due respect, you talk to your professor, you always start off with all due respect.
Right. But you don't not rush either. I mean, it's something I want to get done. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was a mess. And then my friend, she had the same chair that I did. She never graduated, and actually kicked her out of school, and they gave her a master's degree. And they thought they were going to get sued by the university, and that's what a bad chair does.
Right.
Bad chair leaves a track record.
Well, you've got to understand that you're kind of the chair of your dissertation committee. Your chair,
absolutely,
kind of the secretary. They're administratively running things, but they're not driving this process forward. That's not. Some of them.
Totally agree.
Some of them are really dedicated. They want you to graduate. But a lot of them have a lot of other things. You're not their priority. That's something that you've got to take responsibility for yourself. Being proactive, like you said, is a big deal. Now, I know a lot of universities these days are acting a little bit more business-like. They actually have 2-week turnaround times for committee members to get papers back to folks. And that's very helpful.
My school didn't do that. And you probably graduated around the same time I did, Dr. Strickland. They kind of just did what they wanted to do. Like, they took a month to look at it. Well, so be it. You better not say anything to them. And that's unfortunate because I think we ought to be held accountable for something.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, the worst story I heard about this, and I'm trying to remember where it came from. I think it was a faculty member that I worked with told me the story. But there was a student who turned in their paper for it to be read around the first part of the year, I think it was. And the professor went off to a conference and came back, and it was getting to be around Valentine's Day. And they said, so, okay, well, can we set up some time maybe next week or two to talk about this paper? And the person said, well, spring break's coming up shortly. Let's do something after spring break. Then there was another conference. And then the professor's like, well, I'm going to be gone for the summer. Let's set something up, just at the start of the school year. This was for a paper review that she had turned in basically at the beginning of the year. And the professor's like, let's talk about it in September. I mean, can you imagine?
Wow.
Can you imagine? And that's something that happens in traditional universities sometimes because, quite honestly, the professors are bringing in a lot of money for those universities when they're doing research and they're going out and publishing and presenting at conferences and all the things they do. Being a teacher, a mentor, a dissertation chair is low on the priority list for some of them. It's not everybody, but certainly for some of them.
Oh yeah, that happened to one of my friends. I think she talked to her chair once or twice a year.
Yeah,
and that's not good cornbread. Okay,
not a good way to do it. So,
absolutely.
All right, so your chair was kind of dragging your feet a little bit, but you started setting expectations, which I think is excellent. I think that's what everybody should do is set those expectations. In fact, you mentioned choosing your chair. An important thing for students to consider is you need to be strategic as you're going through this process and decide,
absolutely,
what are you trying to do? Why are you getting your doctoral degree in the first place? For a lot of people, it is that people that I work with, certainly, it's to further their career. It's to have a doctoral degree. It's not to get into the research community. If that's the case, then you don't need to spend a lot of time in the research community getting to know everybody, publishing over and over again before you write your dissertation. You just need to get your dissertation done. Whether that's you or not, you have to think about what your why is and what your why says about what your dissertation journey should look like. And then if you get to do things like pick your team, pick your chair, make sure you're interviewing people to the extent that you can, or talking to other students about reputations, where having somebody move things forward is important to you, where, getting feedback on a timely basis is important to you. It might not be important to you if that's not your goal. If your goal is to be in the research community, maybe spending 3 or 4 years with a superstar in the field is the right call for you, because it'll take you a long time to graduate, but then you're set up for your career. You just have to know what your why is and make sure you're acting strategically to move towards that at every step along the way.
Oh yeah, when I started working with doctoral students, I was actually working with doctoral students before I graduated, and my friends would ask me, how did I be successful in moving forward? And I said, when you look and picking you should look at your chair like you do on a job interview. You need to look at what they've done, how many committees that they've chaired,
right?
How many students graduated under their tutelage? What do students say about them?
Yep.
What's their background in their research? And the internet is the truth. It'll tell you everything about that person.
Right.
And that's who you decide who will be a good chair or be a good fit for you. Now, some students, they have the antithesis of that. They want somebody that's easy, somebody that's not going to give them a hard time and, just pat them on the head and give them a gold star. And then they wonder why their work isn't nothing, because that's the downside of that. You want to do a good dissertation, but you don't want to sacrifice it, finding an easy chair that's not going to hold you accountable.
Right. So
not only
you have to decide that.
You have to do that for the chair and the committee members. Now, here's the downside of that. You have committee members that don't get, and they're not going to tell you that. That's something you usually find out on the back end, and so be it. They should be professional. And the goal is to get you out of school, not because somebody didn't make good cornbread with somebody else. Right. Remember, the dissertation, and I said this to you when we had first met Dr. Strickland, the dissertation is 90% politics and 10% research. Believe it or not.
I don't know about those numbers, but the politics is important. And I'll totally agree that when we talk about interviewing your chair, if you pick your chair first, then you should consult with your chair on who should go on the committee, because making sure that folks work together, getting your chair's feedback on, how is this person about turning things around? How is this person about getting things approved? Once you and I, me and your chair and you have agreed that it's good enough, really you kind of like the committee to say, okay, that's fine. It's okay if they have an expertise in something and they can help you make it a little bit better, that's one thing. But if it's their attitude that they have to put their 2 cents in all the time, that's not necessarily productive. That's just, like you said about ego before, that's them ego stroking, saying, hey, I know something, you need to put what I know in your paper, whether it belongs there or not.
I totally agree. I totally agree with that. And here's the other part when you chair, and I've learned this chairing students now. A chair can't do everything. You can't guide the student and be the editor and be the content expert. Right. You can't do that. That's why you have a committee. Yeah. If you get the student through the dissertation, you could have somebody else be the editor. Correct. If you get the student through the dissertation, you say, hey, I think you should talk to Dr. Strickland. This is his area of expertise. Let him look at your chapters and see if it's anything that's missing. That's the most functional way how a committee should work. But you have chairs that have egos. Yeah. It's me and I and him, and if I don't like it, I'm not gonna listen to anybody. Yeah. And that's not only a detriment to the committee, that's a detriment to the student. Well, so if the egos get out of hand, you're absolutely right. It becomes pathological. But you have to realize that all committee members have egos, and that they're going to ask you to do something to customize your dissertation for them. It's important for students to realize that this dissertation, although you're listed as the author, it's really your committee's dissertation. When they like it, when they're happy with it, that's when you graduate. If you take this pride of ownership over your dissertation to the extent that you don't want to listen to them and accept their feedback, and you're intractable, then it's going to be a long day at the office for you, or many years to graduation. Exactly. So that's how students that are so brilliant that they can't take direction. And I caught myself early. I was like that. And you can't ask for help but know everything. You just can't do that. Exactly. You mentioned type A personalities before, and I think there's a lot of those folks that go into doctoral degree programs
part of what comes along with that is being a perfectionist. And you've got to let that go as quickly as you can. You know, a B dissertation is going to get you to graduation, and you might actually get it done at some point. But if you're looking for like an A+ dissertation, you're not going to get any extra kudos. You're not going to get any extra degrees. You're not getting anything extra for that unless you're going into the research space. If you want to be in academia, then writing a stellar dissertation that people are talking about will help you. It'll help you get your next job. But if you're going into a field where, you know, what you're doing is something different, you're helping people in business, in industry, maybe counseling, doing public speaking, they're not going to care about your dissertation. They're going to care about what you can do in the quote unquote real world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you obviously want to do a good dissertation. You don't want to do something like the difficulties of basket weaving.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is when sometimes people will come back to me when I tell them that and say something like that. Well, I want to do a good dissertation. Like, listen, good enough. Your university's setting the bar up here. Okay. They're not going to drop it for you. They're setting the bar for you. What the problem is a lot of dissertation students, if you think about like the high jump in the Olympics, the way all of them do it now is they run up to it and they jump over backwards and they kind of scrape their butt over the bar. It's called the Fosbury flop. The guy invented this in like 1968 or something like that. I forgot what year it was, but the guy who invented it basically said, I wasn't a very good athlete. I couldn't keep up with the kids on my college team, and I wanted to go to the Olympics. So I had to do it differently than they were doing it. They were, at the time, they were all jumping over forward, doing barrel rolls, getting style points. There's no style points in that event. It's like, how high is the bar? And so he jumped up, and I told you I had my initial background was in physics. The way that you go over the bar when he does this, your center of mass actually goes under the bar. So literally, you don't have to have enough strength in your legs to get you over the bar. You just contort your body so that initially it's under the bar because your butt's low, but your head's up high. Eventually your head goes over and it starts to drop below the level of the bar, and your feet are still below the level of the bar, and you're just getting your butt over. And your center of mass goes like 2 or 3 inches under the bar is the way it works, which I thought was really cool when I learned about that. But the point is, that's interesting. It's ugly though. When people look at what you're doing, they call it a flop. That's literally what they call the thing. But those are the guys who have the world record right now. The guys who say, I know the bar's up here, and if I'm going to get over the bar, I got to scrape my butt over the bar. I'm not getting style points. We're not taking selfies over the bar. We're just getting over the bar. And that's what a lot of students, so that's when I say perfectionism, that's what I'm talking about. The bar is high. So don't try to do extra. Do what you need to do to graduate. And I think that'll serve you well if you understand that just having that doctoral degree title is very, very important. And fighting with your committee about how perfect you can be about getting it, nobody's going to remember that after. They're just going to look at you and say you took 10 years instead of 5 years to graduate.
Some people, then you got the other side of Dr. Strickland, that your committee members or your chair will punish you. When you don't listen, what do they do? Yeah. Make you do it over 30 times. I've seen that. Maybe about the 29th time you figure out, maybe I should listen and, quit having an attitude and just listen and do what I'm told. And, yes, sir, may I have another, instead of, everything's a battle,
Right. Yeah, that's when I tell our students all the time, listen, when we get feedback, we're going to go over it together, and we're going to figure out how to strategically address every single item that they brought up, whether it's noting, hey, I said this over here, do I need to repeat it? And sometimes the answer is yes, but by communicating with your committee and always trying to respond to everything they ask you to do, you're showing respect to your committee. And that might sound like some old mafioso code or something like that. But listen, everybody wants to have that. I mean, if you're in a position of authority, to have somebody tip their cap a little bit, to say thank you, to say please, to say sir, it gets you a long, long way. I taught my kids that. I will tell a customer service rep on the phone, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Even if I'm getting ready to pick a fight with them, because, if you show respect, I mean, I don't pick a fight with them usually because they can't do anything about it, but you know what I mean? If you show respect to somebody, even if you don't necessarily agree with them, it's helpful. And
how to show the core of respect. I like that.
Yeah.
I was raised, my dad was a strict disciplinarian, and that's how the way I was raised. I was raised on Southern values.
Yeah.
You say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And
Right.
if you don't like something, you say, with all due respect, this is the way I see it, or whatever. And, not showing your chair respect, that's the beginning of the end,
Yeah.
because they have your future in their hand.
Exactly right.
And I
The-
don't understand that logic.
One of the few people I've ever heard of who did not pass their defense. So once they wrote their dissertation and they went to defend it, one of the few people I've ever heard of they didn't pass, told their committee, "I'm ready to defend." And the committee's like, "No, we got a few things to work on." And the way that it worked, the process is the student sends out a I don't know what you call it, an invitation or something like that. The student sends out a request for scheduling. And the committee has a certain amount of time to respond to it. And they have to give them dates and everything. And so it's the student's process is the way it's set up. But the way that it always works is the committee or the chair says, "Okay, let's get your defense scheduled." And then the student initiates the process. This student says, "I'm ready." He kept being told, "I'm not ready. You're not ready." Then he goes up in front of the people who told him that he wasn't ready, defended, and they said, "You weren't ready." Surprise, surprise.
Serious.
It was like,
wow.
So I've heard of 2 cases of somebody failing their defense. That was one. And failing in America just means that you have to do the defense again. There's 3 ways that 3 outcomes for a defense, usually in America. Number 1 is you pass and you're done. We don't want to talk to you. We don't want to see you anymore. Congratulations, doctor.
Right.
That very, very rarely happens. Number 2 is you pass. We don't need to talk to you anymore, but we want you to do X, Y, and Z to the dissertation. We found a couple of things that you need to do.
With conditions.
Do it with your chair, or maybe let the committee see it again, but you're not defending again. You passed. We just need to tweak a couple of things and move on. That's what most everybody does. And then the third is you failed. You actually have to defend again. And that just doesn't happen hardly at all. Like I said, I know 2 people, the first guy and then the second person apparently had someone else writing her dissertation for her the whole time. Showed up. They were asking her she had the presentation. She could read the presentation because the same person probably developed the slides for her. They asked her the simplest questions and they thought, well, maybe she's nervous. So they kept trying to get simpler and simpler. And it became obvious that she didn't know anything about this paper. She hadn't even read the damn thing that she turned in. And so one of the committee members jumped on the phone, called up the program chair and says, "You got to get over here." And it was all virtual. So she had to, jump on the phone and everything. And the program chair was telling me about this later on. And she was like, "Yeah, we had to get, the university involved and all sorts of things because it was clear that she just hadn't done any of the work at all." So hopefully that's no one listening to this at all. but that tells you, it should give you some assurance when you're getting ready to defend. If they invited you to defend, you're ready. Because the committee doesn't want you to fail. That looks bad on them, and they just have to do the work over again. So they don't want you to fail. They want you to do it once and pass either outright or with conditions. Yeah.
I was at a defense, and I saw one failure in my career. I was at a defense, and it was a friend of mine. He was from Taiwan.
Yeah.
He invited his family, his wife, his mother.
Oh no.
Had the defense catered. It was a big deal at my school. They had a special room for it.
Yeah.
Man, he spent a grip. Okay, he spent a grip. He got up there and defended. One of his committee members was a mathematician, I think. He said, "Listen, what's the stuff that I tell you to do? I don't see that in here." And the chair looked at him, and they looked at each other. He says, "Listen, I'm not signing off on this." And it was like a real uncomfortable moment of silence.
No kidding.
And the chair came back. You know how they go meet in the room.
Right.
The chair comes back and says, "Listen, at this time, Simon has not passed his defense. He's got a little bit more work to do, and we'll let him come back." And he was crushed. He was crushed.
I got to wonder, though, how was that committee structured? Because, again, that's supposed to come out. If you are driving things forward and you're saying, "I don't care, come hell or high water, I'm defending in April," or whatever it might be, and you're not ready in April, well, the committee tells you, "Listen, we'll do it in May, okay? You'll be ready then, but we got to do these 3 things first." I don't understand how this chair didn't have sign off from all of the committee members Like that should have been the last thing before they scheduled, is the chair should have said, is everybody good? We got this date. Everybody good with this dissertation? I don't understand
I
how
felt
that
the
is.
same way. I
Yeah.
felt the same way, and a lot of people blame the chair for that. What some people said they could have let him pass because he had his family there. Was
Right.
the work that much where they couldn't say, listen, we'll pass you with conditions?
Right.
No, he outright failed. And the
That's
chair
crazy.
either should have talked to that committee member or made some, I don't know, what would you do in a situation like that?
Well, I think there's some blame to go around. I think the committee
Yeah.
member is a name that I'm probably not going to use on the podcast, but everybody should have known that, and so they should have kind of known how to handle him and strong-armed a little bit and said, okay, everything's good, right? You have any problems or concerns with this dissertation? We want to make sure that we've done everything we need to do so that we're passing this defense. And I would have been that, if I was the chair, I would have been that straightforward about it. The chair maybe never had encountered this before because everybody just knows the rules and knows how to be polite. But sometimes people aren't polite, and sometimes they'll do whatever is in their power to do, even though they have no business doing it.
What's the bad part about that is I wasn't there. My friend told me about it.
Yeah.
And the other committee member that was giving him a hard time was an Asian professor. And he was on his case like really bad. And it was like, wow, you're going to do the kid like that?
Well, sometimes you get that culturally. You see that sometimes with underrepresented groups. You see, the black professor being really hard on the black kid because you got to pull twice your weight to be successful.
I see that all the time.
I don't agree with it, but you understand where it's coming from.
Yeah, if I was a chair in that situation, I would have passed him with conditions.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't allow that committee member to grandstand like that, because that to me was grandstand.
Yeah, no. This could have easily been handled before. So unless this committee member was expressing that frustration over and over and over again and nobody was listening, it certainly doesn't sound like he has any compunction standing up and saying what's on his mind. So he could have done that in a committee setting before this thing was scheduled. That's ridiculous.
I felt really bad for him. He was a good friend of mine. I was at another defense. If you want to hear a quick war story, Dr. Strickland, had a guy. He had pretty slides, went through the song and dance. I mean, he had me hello. Okay.
Yeah.
He had 3 statisticians in the room. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of them says, well, hold up, wait a minute. Did you do a convenience sample or did you do a random sample? And the guy didn't know what a convenience sample was. And he started stuttering and stammering. And the guy says, you don't know what a convenience sample is? And it got so bad, I actually got up and left. My friend stayed. And she said it was worse after I left. She said them statisticians were eating him alive.
Oh, my goodness.
They were killing him. And he was turning red. And in the chair, he got a mercy pass. You know what that is, right, Dr.
What was the degree program?
It was in business leadership. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I don't know why those guys were there, because it's not a statistics program. He doesn't have to know all that stuff. Certainly a convenience sample is something you would expect to know. So I know different universities look at it different ways. Some of them look at, the old school defense, it was really a defense. Yeah. And these were the guardians of the gates of academia, and you had to knock them over to get through. I had, war stories. I had one of those when I was at the University of Chicago. Our big, the big trial by fire there is the, what do they call it? The candidacy exam, I think they called it. I don't remember what the word was that you used, but this qualifying exam period. Okay. So we did a full day long written test on everything. And I mean, the professors it was part of the lore, the culture in the department. Professors would routinely tell folks, listen, none of the professors can pass this candidacy exam because it goes deep in like everybody's area, or in a lot of different areas at least. And we go deep in our area, but the students know all this stuff. They said, we will legitimately come in there and ask you questions that we want to know the answer to over the summer, because we know that we could either find the right guy down the hall somewhere, or we could just go to the first years and ask them, because they know everything getting ready for this.
Right.
So that was the way they did it. It was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pressure. And so you take the exam, you do the best you can do. Obviously you were getting completely beaten up because everybody's giving you their best shot. and they're all world
Yeah.
renowned people. So
Yeah.
what you have to do is you have to know what stuff did you get right and it's just done and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And where did you have problems? And you have to know this. And then you go study
Right.
the next week on anything that you didn't know, because the next week is when you have oral exams.
That's
And
right.
the oral exams,
Yep.
that's when they're up there
Yep.
beating you up over the stuff that you got wrong, so to speak. And so I knew where I messed up and I had it ready. And one of the nice women who's always, she was fairly young. She was very, very friendly to all of the students all the time. She asked me the question about it. She started, digging in with like on Marathon Man, if you know that scene where the guy was digging into a cavity in the guy's tooth with a hook, and then he'd give him a little bit of ointment, go back and forth. Well, she got the hook out. And I was like, okay, I got this. And I did my little song and dance. I said, that's it. And she's over here on this side and she says, okay, well, I'm satisfied. Before my heart could even beat again, the guy on the other side says, well, I'm not. And I'm like, oh, what's going on?
Always one.
He asked me another follow-up question. And I'm sitting here thinking in my head, this is it. I got to leave. I got to go home. I'm not going to be allowed to stick around anymore. Wait a minute. I understand what he's talking about. I know what he means. I can answer that question. And then I answered it to him. But I remember thinking in that series of steps between, that's it, I failed, I'm going home, to, wait, I know what I'm talking about here. And as soon as I told him that, he's like, okay, I'm satisfied now. And that was exactly what he wanted. Was, Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth, or something like that.
Exactly.
That's exactly what he wanted. Because as a professional, at some point, you're going to get punched in the mouth. And you need to be able to stand there and take it and deal with it appropriately. If you don't know the answer, say you don't know the answer, and then tell them how we can find out the answer together, or how I can look it up and get back to you, or whatever the case might be. In that exam, I don't know if I didn't know the answer, what the outcome would have been, but I do know that if I didn't know the answer, I would have told them, I don't know. And then they might have said, well, why don't we think through it? Can we talk through it together? And they might have seen, could they lead me along and me pick up the string and do enough? Or they might have said, well, if you don't know, leave. I don't know what the outcome would have been, but I do know that if you don't know the answer, that's what you have to say.
I love what you said there, because the dissertation defense is the truth, the other part of the truth. And what that means is it's not about the question. They want to see how you answer it.
Yeah.
Do you know how to pivot? A lot of students don't know how to pivot. Like, here's an example. If you did a study on apples and I ask you about oranges, they're both fruit, right?
Yeah.
But oranges has nothing to do with apples. I want to see how you answer the question.
Yeah.
So what you're supposed to say is, Dr. Such and Such, that's an interesting question. However, that'll be a good future study line of inquiry for me to work on. And then you got to what? Pivot. Mm-hmm. However, my line of inquiry focused on this particular area, and that's probably where I'm strong at, but I will consider that as a future line of study.
Right.
But how long did it take you to learn that?
Well, or so there's another thing you can do. So you say, I don't know up front, because there is no shame in that game. One of the things I was taught there at the University of Chicago is, listen, it's not okay to know nothing. If you're going to be an expert, you got to know something. But nobody knows everything. Say you don't know, and that's fine. Half the time, if somebody's asking you a question in an academic circle, it's because they want to get up and start pontificating on their own study, on their own work. And so they know the answer. They just want to start talking about it. But the other thing you can do is, when you say, well, I don't know, maybe we could think about it in this way. You've made it very clear that you are not giving them the right answer. You don't know. You're going to think through it with them, because you want to be respectful to their question and give them a process where maybe they can help figure it out. Maybe you can help them get the answer to their question. And then ultimately they can come back and say, well, I actually know the answer. Or they probably won't say it like that, but they'll come back with, their 2 cents, and you can have a conversation that way if you want to. Or you can cut it short at some point and say, well, I can look into that and get back to you. Those are all things that you can do. And I think it's great to be able to say, well, let's just start jamming on this thing. Let's freestyle and see where it goes. But you can't do that without telling the person unequivocally, I don't know, but let's think about it. Let's talk through it. Then you can start doing that. What the problem is, a lot of folks will try to do that before saying, I don't know. They'll just start saying whatever comes to mind. and that's not
Exactly.
good. That's not good at all.
You actually hit something, Dr. Strickland. Here's one of the things is that's why it's important you should attend defenses, especially in your department and the committee members that you have, because you kind of know the feel of how they ask questions. And that's why you always want to attend defenses. You should at least, by the time you graduate, attend at least 10 or 15 defenses, because they have them all the time in your department. And when you see how your posture is supposed to be, what the committee member is going to ask you, that actually helps you step up your game, because you know what you need to do. And so it's almost like, go ahead.
To you. You know, if the very, very first time you stepped into the batter's box was against some sort of, you know, Cy Young award-winning pitcher in the World Series, chances are you're not going to do very good, not do very well at all.
Exactly.
But if you've practiced, if you've seen it before, if you've gotten in the batter's box and seen these guys throw and you know how fast it goes, then you got a sense as to what it's like.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. I mean, they say in baseball, you know, well, let's see how a guy does when we put the third deck on, because, you know, minor leagues will have like 1 or 2 decks. Get to the major leagues, they got a third deck, and all of a sudden there's all these people looking at you, 40,000 people at a game. How do you handle that pressure? Well, the very first time, maybe not so well, but after a few times, you're used to that. And so going out there and seeing what different defenses are like, maybe getting somebody who is going to you know, not be an easy committee member for a student and see what that process is like. It's helpful for you, because when you face it yourself, you'll have a little bit of experience. You will have seen it before.
Oh, absolutely. And I also want to piggyback on what you just said. You should also go to other universities and attend defenses, because you got to creep up on somebody that did a bad defense and how you should handle it to make sure you don't do that. Because a lot of students, you know, we have to get out of our comfort zone. Yeah, I'm attending defenses at my school, but you should go to other schools. I mean, you know, make it a part of your journey as part of, you know, your training. I want to see how people handle defenses and what's different styles of answering questions. And that would be a tremendous help to you.
And a lot of universities, a lot of students who are doing this as adults now, their universities, their experience is virtual, the defense becomes virtual. And those defenses, they aren't publicized in the same way, but still most of those universities record those defenses, and they're archived so that if you want to, you can go out there and find them. So ask folks at your university about that, because it is something that you can do to witness a defense. Even though you're not attending it, you can see it later, you can listen to it later, that sort of thing.
Oh, exactly. Make you a stronger candidate when you go present. You've already seen some of the things our students handle themselves, and it'll give you actually a lot more confidence.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen students that never attended a defense and they scared.
Yeah. Well, I work with a lot of students who, you know, the way the university is set up, it's hard to get to a defense until it's yours. And I have to keep telling them, listen, you're ready for this, because they don't necessarily believe it. They don't know exactly what it's like. But talking about pivot, we could go on like this, I'm sure, all day. I want to talk a little bit about what you've done since school, because I know there's a lot of interesting stuff there, and some things that are really important to folks who graduated recently. Even if you haven't graduated recently, if you want to be in the expert game, if you're out there in business for yourself, if you're an entrepreneur, even if you don't consider yourself an entrepreneur, maybe you're a counselor or a coach or something, and you think, I'm not an entrepreneur. Well, number one, you are, but number two, if you're in that expert game, what have you got for folks there? Tell us a little bit about how you went from school to doing what you're doing now.
Oh, absolutely. When I graduated from school, I actually started from zero.
Yeah.
And the first thing I want to do is build my consulting practice. Each area that I got my doctorate in, and you see how the dots connect.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to get into the legal expert witness field, and I said, okay, I have my doctorate in entrepreneurship. What do I do with that?
Yeah.
Where I said, okay, so I started looking up, you know, people that are expert witnesses, and I started looking at different fields, and the field is so vast.
Yeah.
You have people that, you know, do insurance claims. You have people that do forensic accounting, things of that sort, seeing if someone's stipulating financials.
Right.
So I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, why don't I pick 3 areas that are problems in the field of entrepreneurship, and build my expertise around those, and then position myself to be an expert in those 3 particular areas. You can do that in any field.
Right. And that's important, because for folks who aren't aware of this, you don't want to, if you're going to be an expert, you don't want to be a generalist. You want to have what people call a niche. You want to be in a niche so that there's, if anybody wants exactly what you do, you become the obvious choice. And most niches, although they might be small, there's a need for them. There's a demand for them. And so if you want it to be just a general expert witness, well, nobody's going to come calling for an expert witness. But if somebody wants to know about, solopreneurs cooking the books or something like that, and that you wrote the book on it, or you're doing, media appearances on it or something like that, you become the obvious choice.
Oh, that's an excellent point, Dr. Strickland. And what you want to do is try to narrow your scope to 3 core areas. 3 is enough. 3 is more than enough. 3 core areas. Okay. So like, let me give you my example. I'm entrepreneurship. So what's my core area? Business scams, like multi-level marketing. When people go into those different fields, or people get scammed out of their money. Another one is I'm on the marketing side, trade dress. Like when somebody creates a product that looks just like another product, and companies want to go to court, and they bring you in as a witness. They go, well, I'm a trade dress expert. Let's see. The fonts are the same. The colors are the same. The overall package is the same. I think that's a direct imitation, if not the ripoff of the other product. They will bring people into court cases for that.
One of my friends in my mastermind, so the group that I belong to, is a PI, and that's what they focus on is counterfeiting. And it's amazing how much, some of the stories he's told us about things that they find that are counterfeit out there. And some people are like, well, what's the big deal? It's counterfeit. So what? Number one, the person who actually created the thing, they deserve to get compensated for that. But number two, a lot of times those counterfeit things, might be made of something that's not good for you. So certainly you don't want any counterfeit makeup, anything you'll be carrying around all day. You don't know what that stuff is made of. In some parts of the world, they don't care as much about what they put into a product if they can make it cheaply. So it's important to get the real deal. But you mentioned
the other part of it. The third one is competitive intelligence.
Okay.
Like if someone's doing something, actually that's not the other one. What's the other one? I forgot the other one is. It's trade dress, business scams. I think it's 2 right now. It's just 2. Those 2. And then, false advertising. Because I got caught. I was asked to be an expert with a false advertising campaign, and a state was trying to sue this company, and they brought me in as an expert, and they, paid me for my deposition. And those are my 3 core areas: false advertising, trade dress, scams. And when you want to build your niche, this all goes back to what you said earlier, building your niche. Nobody knows what you know, those 3 areas. Most of the time when they go looking for somebody like you, your name is going to be at the top of the list. That's why it's important not to be a generalist and find your niche, because you're in a sea of other legal experts.
When you say your name's going to be at the top of the list, what is the list, and how do you get your name at the top of the list?
Well, there's legal expert witnesses directories that you become a part of. Some you have to pay, some are free. The ones you pay for are the ones who give you cases and ask you, they'll send you an email and say, they're looking for an expert witness in this particular area. We want to see if you would be interested. Sometimes some things outside of my circle of competence, ask that on some in my circle of competence. I say, okay, I can help the attorney with this case. Sometimes you get picked as a plaintiff's attorney. Sometimes you get picked as a defendant's attorney. When you're a plaintiff's attorney, that means you're going to have to do some research, and then you could be picked apart by the defense attorney. The other part of that is they like to hire people that have doctorates. There's something about them, I don't know what that is. They like people to have doctorates.
It's the instant credibility, right? You walk into a room, your first name is doctor. So there's 2 numbers that get thrown around for, with regard to doctoral studies all the time. And that is that 50% graduate and that 1% of the population holds a doctorate degree. Well, I have a hard time breaking down the 50% because I hear of cohorts where they're like, there was 30 and now there's 3. So the number might not be as good, but that 1%, I've actually checked the census data, And it shows
Uh-huh.
over a period of like 10 years that the numbers tend to fluctuate somewhere between a little less than 1% and about 1.5%. So it's about 1% of the
Wow.
population that
Oh my
holds an
goodness.
earned doctoral degree. And so you think about how many people that is. You get in a room of 100 people, statistically speaking, you're going to be the only one that has a doctoral degree. So we go to a courtroom, it probably isn't going to have 100 people in it. So if you got a
Exactly.
doctoral degree, chances are you're the only one. Now, obviously, it depends on what room you're walking into. You walk into a university, it doesn't apply, but that's the
Right.
idea there. In general, you go to the grocery store, chances are you're going to be the only person with a PhD in the grocery store at that time.
And that's a great point, because when you look at the directory of the expert witnesses, I would say very few have a doctorate. And
Really?
then yeah, I'm serious.
Wow.
I didn't know this until I got into the game. I was like, wow, because there's a lot of people in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
They have master's degrees. They know about marketing,
Right.
but there's very few that have doctorates. And now there's specific niches of expertise that they don't have a doctorate in, like say fire science. Somebody's building caught on fire.
Yeah.
You can't really get a doctorate in that. So, but they'll look at people with a license
Right.
that has a licensing or licensure or certificates in that particular area.
Right.
But
Sure.
the majority of the legal expert witnesses do not have doctorates. And when we did our training, yes, surprising. We did our training. We found out that when you have a doctorate, and I'll tell you the other side of this, Dr. Strickland. When you have a doctorate, if the opposing attorney is trying to find some dirt on you, they're gonna look up
Yeah.
all your articles.
Yeah.
They're gonna look up all the presentations you've done. They'll look at all the books that you've written, and they're trying to find if you exaggerated your CV. Because if you exaggerated your CV, they will find out. And they will expose you, and it will really hurt your credibility as a legal expert witness.
Yeah.
So you want to be like Joe Friday. Just give them the facts, ma'am. Just give them the facts. If you didn't present at a conference, don't say you did,
So you did.
because
Yeah,
that can be
true.
found out. Exactly.
Yeah, that's
And
100% true. I hope that anybody who's getting a doctoral degree has enough sense to do that. And I know that there's a mentality, certainly among entrepreneurs. There's this code that says "fake it till you make it." Well,
yeah,
if you faked it a little bit too bad in writing on a resume or a CV at some point, make real sure you clean that mess up. Because you got a doctoral degree. People are going to believe what you have to say, and you have got to be responsible enough to make sure you're saying the truth. That when you don't know something, you say you don't know, and you don't represent yourself any differently. Now, marketing, you can sell yourself, but you can't lie about the facts. All right. You say you want an award, you might make the award sound like it's a really cool award, and it turns out that it was a small group of people, a small little professional organization that you spoke at their keynote, and they gave you an award for it. That's okay, but you can't lie about any of this stuff. You can't do that at all.
If you want a pie eating contest, say you want a pie eating contest. Don't say you're the researcher of that pie eating contest and you were putting it together. Because now what we're talking about, these attorneys are like snakes or hawks.
Oh yeah.
They will look you up and down on Google Scholar. They will look you up and down in Google, and they're looking for some daylight to hurt your credibility to a case that's important.
Yeah.
Don't give them the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
If you
say
say
you about this, how can I believe you about that?
And then you can be disqualified as a legal expert witness. You have to let future attorneys know that you were disqualified from a case because they found something in your background. So you don't want to go up that tree. Right. You just don't want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So absolutely.
So that's 100%. That just comes along with the ethics that we all learned in our doctoral degree program. So when it's somebody else's idea, you cite them. If you're quoting them, you quote them. It's not a problem to not know everything. As I mentioned before, you just have to know something. And you mentioned you got your niche that you focused on, and then you kind of grew it. You had 2 and then 3. That's okay. Just stick to those areas. You don't have to know everything. And it's okay if you get up there on the stand and someone asks you about something to tell them what you know and what you don't know. Because a lot of times these attorneys are going to try to turn you around and make you say things that, if they want you to say no, then they can ask you a question that you're going to have to say no to. That's all right. Just make it obvious that that's why you're saying no.
There's definitely a training to cross-examination from the
Mm.
opposing attorney. When they're going to try to make you mad, and when
Yeah.
they're going to try to, they'll sometimes they'll put an untruth in their question,
Mm.
and to see how you defend it, and then they'll do anything in their power to discredit you. And you know, when you're seasoned, you don't react to things. You say, "Well, with all due respect, sir, that is not what my study was about. My study was about this." And you know, and the judge and the jury and can see all of that.
Right.
So don't give them the gun and the bullets. You know, make
Yeah.
it work for it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. You also mentioned that you have written a book, that you're a published author. Tell us a little bit about your book and what that experience was like for you.
Sure. The first time I did a book, I did it based on my doctoral research, and that's helpful. See, you get dual uses from your dissertation. And I published my first book, which was a bestseller. It was called Risk Factors and Business Models, based on my doctoral research, where I won a fellowship. Okay. And let me give you some tricks of the trade for your listeners when you getting your doctorate and you want to turn it into a book.
Mm-hmm.
Never use the same title that you used for your dissertation.
Right.
Why? Academic titles don't sell.
That's right. Nobody's going to want to read that.
Nobody's going to read it. So you want to simplify your title for the mere mortals. Yeah. Second number thing is...
Actually, you want to sexify your title, because you want to make sure it's something that people are going to look at and pick up and want to read.
Exactly.
You know, I do that, or I try to do that when we're putting out these podcast episodes. I try to make sure that the title is something interesting, so that when someone sees it, they're like, "Oh, let me see what that's all about."
Yes. Marketing 101. Okay. Remember, everybody's not in a doctoral program. They're not going to want to know all those chi-squares.
None of that.
Regression models.
The other thing is, when you talk about titles, remember what's in it for them, not what's in it for you. This is not, I'm Dr. Smarty. This is, I'm solving your problem.
Exactly.
I'll confess, I knew this stuff, but when I was starting Dissertation Done, I'll confess, I went out there looking at Dissertation Genius and Dissertation Coach and things like that. Yeah. And I don't know what I'm doing to my competition right now when I say that. Those names are taken. But they didn't. Right. Luckily for me, I didn't jump on them right away. And I started thinking, well, what should I call this company? And then it clicked. Wait, what is it that people want? You know, the folks that I'm talking to, what do they want? They want to get their dissertation done. And that's why, you know, if you're on YouTube, right up here, the title, it's Dissertation Done. It's not about me. It's about you. And if you're writing something for popular, you got to do that. Yeah, I got to say, that's probably one of the best things I've done in business. that name I'm real happy with.
And you basically prove my point is you want a title that's simpler for the reading audience, which is different from academic audience. Yeah. And you also want a title that can remember.
Yeah.
Okay. You can't remember some of these academic titles, even on your best day, you could remember them.
Not at all.
And then you may disagree with me on this point. If you're writing a book and you're first out the gate, do not put Ph.D. after your name. Why? That's the deal breaker for some readers, because they believe that when they see Ph.D. after somebody's name, it's going to be boring. So when you do your first book, just put your name. Now, when you flip the book around and you want people to see your background, that's where you sell the Ph.D. and it gives you credibility. Like, unless you're Dr. Phil and you write a book, people don't know who you are. You have no brand. So you just put your name, and then on the back of your book, you give your bio. You say, and this is a mistake I made in my first book, and I'll share with you this. Highest degree first, not your first degree that you get. If you got your PhD, you put your PhD first, then your master's, then your bachelor's. You don't put your bachelor's, then your master's, and then your doctorate. That's the mistake I made with my first. I got it right for the second book. I learned. Well,
I will disagree with you about the doctor thing, though, on the title. I think you should have it there, but you got to make sure that everything about the cover, about the title, the little subtitle, everything there has got to convince the person that this is something I want to read. I have a book that's coming out soon, and it's got, if you flip through it, it's got like cartoon pictures in the book, because I'm trying to make the concepts easy for people. Some of these concepts are, I'm talking to a doctoral student audience. So it's not simple stuff we're talking about necessarily, but if you present it in a simple way, in an accessible way, even if it's for like a group of doctoral students, I'm still probably writing at an 8th or 9th grade level in that book, because that's what you do. People want it to be easy. You don't want to be reading a book that's supposed to be helpful to you and you're sitting there reading it with a dictionary. You want to be able to read it.
Exactly.
And so that's the thing. You don't, again, you're not trying to impress people that you're smart. You are trying to impress people that you can help them solve a problem that they have. And if you do that,
in that context, I could agree with you in that context.
And your name is Doctor, now you got them hooked. But the first thing is the title. The first thing is they got to see that book and say, that sounds like something I'm interested in. That sounds like a cool way of doing it. One of the things about academic titles is they tell you the answer, like right in the title. It's all there.
Right.
Like you just about don't have to read the study. You can read the title and you say, okay, I got it. And I'll see the study for more information. Your book title needs to be something that builds some curiosity. I understand what he's talking about, but I have no idea where he's going with this. That's the thing.
Exactly.
So,
and I had a colleague of mine that did that. He made that mistake. He had used his dissertation title for his book, and he didn't move any units other than his family buying his book.
Because what was his dissertation title? Something like, a phenomenological study of the antecedents of, yada yada in, no one's going to read that at all.
His title was just like that.
It's got to be something catchy. One of my podcast titles from way back, the lady was a superintendent of a public school system. She had her doctoral degree and she was still teaching in the classroom. And her principal walked in one day and says, listen, we're not going to be renewing your contract. You're going to have to move on. And she's like, what's going on? He's like, you got your doctoral degree. I'm kicking your butt out. You got to do something else. And he was doing it out of love. He was doing it it was a perfectly fine thing. He was doing it out of love. He was helping her. Right. And she went on, and like I said, she was running the school district, a different school district, but running the school district shortly. And that was kind of the title of our podcast, was from getting kicked out of the classroom to running the whole district. And people were like, what? How did somebody get kicked out of the classroom? And what is this all about? There's some curiosity there. And it doesn't tell the whole story. That one tells a lot of the story, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And you're going to come and want to look at it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That happened with one of my daughter's teachers. She had her doctorate and she was teaching in junior high school.
Yeah.
And I was like, university, I think that teaching these kids is a little bit under her pay grade. Yeah. I think I just, some people do what they like. What's the part, yeah.
That's fine. So the problem is when you get folks who are like, we're not going to pay you for that doctoral degree, and they're going to kick you out for that reason. If it's what you really want to do, that's one thing. This principal knew this particular lady, and this was not done out of malice or out of being cheap or anything like that. It was really done out of love. It was helpful to her. But sometimes you need that little, you need to get pushed out of the nest sometimes to be able to spread your wings. So.
Well, here's the other part of that too, Dr. Strickland. You got kids calling you doctor, but they don't call a principal doctor.
Yeah, if you're in that situation, that's something too. Yeah. So there are some times when you get specialists that come into the school that are doctor, speech pathologist. My son has to wear hearing aids, and so his audiologist or the school system has an audiologist that'll come in. They'll be doctor, and the principal might not be. That's okay. But the principal is clearly directly over the teachers. That does, like you said, it creates a little bit of a bad look.
Never outshine the master.
So,
but yes, indeed.
What did the book do for you once you got it out there and you started leveraging it? How did you leverage it? And what did that do for your career?
Well, here's the other part of when we talk about building your expertise. Well, when you do a book, what you don't realize, that book does things that you cannot do individually or have the capability to do individually. The book is on the internet. My book was on Amazon.
Yep.
So I started having people that wanted to interview me in the media, like radio shows, television shows. So I had to learn another part of my game. I had to learn how to do media interviews because everybody's not trained to do that. Case in point, how to make talking points, how to make sound bites, how to answer a question. And, you know, that's something that we take for granted. But when you're on the air, somebody's asking you a question, how do you sound intelligent when you're expressing yourself about a question? So I had to buy 2 books and learn how to do media interviews. The first one was a test run. And the second one, I said, okay, I'm gonna get better at this, because I was actually nervous when I would do media interviews.
Yes.
So when you do a book, the book gives you instant credibility, believe it or not. And when people around radio shows and podcasts around the country, they want interesting books and they want interesting people to interview. So when they ask you for an interview, you want to be able to, you know, bring the goods. You don't want to go, well, Dr. Miles, you did your book on this. Can you tell me something about it? You don't want to go, no, you don't want to do that.
And it's about stories, right? Something that folks can relate to, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's important. Do you remember the book that you used to help you learn that?
Oh goodness, you would ask me that. I actually emailed the author. I tell you what I'll do. I'll send you the 2 links to the books that I have, and you can share them with the audience.
Yeah,
I don't remember the titles, but those are 2 books that I found to be learn how to do media interviews. And when we did our workshop in Atlanta, the title was From Ph.D. to Expert. We actually used those 2 books in our workshop, and I definitely sent them to you. And I think if you want to serious about your career, because what is it? You're not an expert till you're on TV. Okay. Yeah. Till somebody asks you about it. And then here's the beautiful book, Dr. Strickland. People are always looking for guests to interview on their shows.
Yeah.
And if you give them a good book or give them a book that's interesting to an audience, they will call you for an interview. And then when you do the interview, you train yourself. Now the first one, it's going to be rough because you're nervous. You don't know what to say. But as you learn how to do media interviews, it becomes second nature to you. Now, what's hard is TV. Yeah. TV is the hardest. You have to watch how you look and watch how you project yourself to the camera and what you say. And I remember the first TV interview I did, you know, I look back at it, I shake my head, but, you know, that's all training.
Yeah.
Training. No. I was asked to be in a documentary, and it was the same thing.
We were talking about baseball a little bit earlier, right? You don't start in the major leagues. You start in the minor leagues. With TV,
exactly.
you're going to start with something that's probably pretty local, probably something pretty small, because you're going to need that cred to get up there on a national cable channel or national network or something like that. They're not going to bring in someone that they don't see what they've done. They're going to want to look at your portfolio of appearances. They're going to want to look at your videos. And so it's okay. That's something that I learned a while ago, was when you start doing anything in this world, to put something out there. If you're going to start doing a newsletter or a podcast or a YouTube channel or anything else, be grateful for the fact that no one is watching you, no one's listening to you at first, because it gives you a chance to find your voice. And as you find your voice, you're going to attract the right people, and it's a positive feedback loop. Everything gets better and better as you go through it. But you have to start.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can't improve from zero. You have to have something that you're doing to be able to improve on it. Exactly.
I totally agree. You want to refine yourself. You want to perfect your craft. And then when people start asking you to do media interviews, you do them in your sleep. You know how you want to talk. You know what to say. And a lot of times when you have a host of a show, you just bounce off the host. Because a lot of times they'll send you talking points. Now, what does this relate back to your dissertation? You think they're going to ask you questions, right? No, they may ask you something totally off the cuff. You have to be able to pivot when they ask you things in a media interview, like, Dr. Miles, I saw that you done statistics on the 2020 presidential election. Who do you think is going to win? And you go, well, based on our research, we found this.
Right.
So if you would ask me predictive analytics, I would say I would think the other candidate would win.
Right.
So basically, doing media interviews is an art, and it's something that anybody can learn. It's not rocket science, but it does take practice. Definitely takes practice.
And you have to find that balance between making sure that you're being, factual and credible, and being authentic, being you, because you being you is what's going to drive your business. It's going to bring the right people to you. If you're out there, if I spent this time while I'm on my podcast pretending to be somebody else, then there's a chance that I might grow my business faster, but it's not going to be one that I'm interested in. I'm not going to, gel with my clients as well. But if I'm just being me, and that's good enough for whoever's coming and listening to this thing and coming to me after they listen to this thing, then I got the right people that I know I'm going to be able to help, and that we're going to have fun working together. So that's important. You want to, when you're living your life, you only get to do it once, and you want to try to have fun doing it. So you got to be yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's wonderful is when you're doing media interviews, I love your point there, and I'll piggyback on that. When you're doing media interviews, they love calling you doctor.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's about. I believe it's because when they bring a doctor in, whatever field of study that you have your expertise in, it's something about they use that to drive their interviews and their ratings and get people to listen to their interviews.
It's the halo effect, right? You had a doctoral degree, and I was important enough to get a doctor on my show. So I am incredible because I have a doctor on my show. It's the halo effect. Exactly. And they call you doctor. They may ask you what you think about the weather, and they still call you doctor because you have a certain level of credibility to them. And that's what it's all about. See, you don't see the end game while you're working on your dissertation. You don't see all these different things that spawn from you doing that dissertation. And that's the beauty in all of this. Absolutely. But there is that credibility no matter what you're doing. I had, when I was a graduate student, my college roommate was getting married, and they flew me down, and I was standing up at his wedding. I had to go to the rehearsal dinner, and my hotel room wasn't ready. His mom was taking care of the hotel room for me. She actually was the head of the education department at the local university. And they were asking her, we were trying to figure out what was going on, why the room wasn't ready yet. She was trying to explain to them, listen, he just flew in from Chicago. We need to get him dressed. He's got to go out to the rehearsal dinner. We need to, even if it's not his room for tonight, we need a room to put him in so that he can, put his things someplace secure and get ready. And the person at the desk was getting a little exasperated. She said, well, Mrs. Jones, well, that wasn't her name, but Mrs. Jones. And before the words came out of her mouth about why they couldn't do something, his mom stood up and said, that's Dr. Jones. And the woman immediately said, oh, I'm sorry, let me go get my manager. And I'm looking at her like, what the heck does that have to do with my hotel room?
Right.
And she's this unassuming lady. She was a really sweetheart, but she just knew that occasionally you have to throw your weight around, and that's one of the ways you can do it. So if you earned it, right?
Exactly.
I don't have ever used it in that way, but it's nice knowing that's in your back pocket if you needed it.
Oh yeah.
But professionally, you should be using it. You earned it. You should, have your clients address you as Dr. So-and-so. When you get to have a first name relationship, it's okay. It's a first name relationship. But certainly if you're going to be an expert witness, if you're going to be appearing on media or something like that, you don't want to have this ostentatiousness. You just want to have this air of credibility and authority. It's something you've earned that not everybody else has. So it's important.
And also too, the attorneys see you on TV and they bring that up and use that against you. They're like, oh, so your doctor such and such, your Dr. Strickland. Well, what makes you know so much? Well, where have you been interviewed? And that's where you literally have to put out your verbal resume in front of, well, I've been interviewed in Forbes. I've been interviewing this. I think I know something about this subject to discuss this in this case. And that usually shuts attorneys down. So see how this comes together, see how all the dots connect. Yeah,
that's true. It's 100%. I think that's a good place for us to kind of wrap things up. I want to, though, make sure that folks who have been just on the edge of their seats listening to Dr. Miles all this time, they know how to reach out to you. What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you if they'd like to follow up and continue this conversation later on?
Sure, I'm on Twitter. I'm at D. Anthony, Ph.D. at Twitter, on Twitter. Got my website, mdicorpventures.com, and allowed to get my email. Is that okay?
If you want to, it'll be out there.
Sure. Absolutely. My email is dmiles@mdicorpventures.com.
Very cool.
Shoot me an email or shoot me a message on Twitter, and I'll definitely get back to you. Absolutely.
And then is LinkedIn a good place to reach you too?
Oh yeah, LinkedIn.
Right.
I forgot how LinkedIn works. But if you do a search of my name on Google, my LinkedIn page actually
We'll
will
get
come
it.
up.
Anybody wants to check any of that stuff out, we'll have it all in the show notes. So we'll have the links there. We'll get the books. We do a little resource section in the show notes each time. So we'll definitely do that. Make sure people can reach back out to you.
Oh, absolutely. I sure appreciate it. And I will email you. I got your email, Dr. Strickland. I will email you those 2 books to train you on how to do media interviews. I think you get a kick out of them.
Yeah, I'll check them out. We'll drop those in the resource section too. I look forward to it. Thanks so much for being here with me today, Dr. Miles. I really appreciate it.
Dr. Strickland, it was a blast. I really enjoyed it. I had talked about this stuff in years.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I want to just remind you folks that today's episode is brought to you by Dissertation Done. So if you are going through, and you're experiencing those war stories about your dissertation right now, then reach out to us at dissertationdone.com/done. That's dissertationdone.com/done. And that's if you're getting ready to start your dissertation, you want somebody to proactively lead you through it. If you're struggling right now, and if you're even about to quit, we brought people back from all of those points and got them to graduation. And if you're now past that whole dissertation thing and you want to jump into this expert space that Dr. Miles and I have been talking about, because it is a blast, then best way to do that is by becoming a published author, and we can walk you through that process. Go to dissertationdone.com/book, and we'll have a conversation about getting you started on that process. So look forward to helping you out in any way I can. Dr. Miles, once again, thank you so much for being with us. I had such a fun time.
Thank you. I had a blast, Dr. Strickland. I really enjoyed this. I thank you
Great.
so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. And to everybody else out there listening, you have a wonderful day, and go out and live your unconventional life.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.